As we dwell in our shelter in place and stare down the barrel of a potential Biden candidacy, it's easy to romanticize our previous realities and hope to return to a sense of normalcy. We're living in a hellscape, unable to leave our homes, our whole lives on hold, unable to see friends and live in community. It is a time so desperate, pretty much anything feels better compared to this. But I want to remind us all that once shelter in place is over, whenever that is, we cannot go back to normal. We cannot continue to live in the status quo that has been perpetuated for decades. Americans say they crave freedom above all else, but Americans are not free right now, nor have they been free for a long time. America's safety net has always been pretty pathetic, and therefore Americans have always been worried about money, consumed by it. Even 1 in 3 American millionaires does not consider themselves wealthy. We are all driven by an overwhelming societal pressure to make money, make money, make money. A pressure that erodes our true freedom to pursue whatever our passions actually are. In our society, following our dreams is a risk, a financial risk, and many never do, choosing instead to bury their dreams deep inside themselves, satisfying themselves instead with a paycheck at a normal job, sometimes taking up hobbies, sometimes not. Following your dreams is seen as silly and idealistic. People who aren't content to put their heads down and participate in the system are ridiculed. Our government would rather us spend all our time earning money, so we never have time to even think about what we'd rather be doing. We have to earn money to make rent every month, money to feed ourselves, exorbitant sums to educate ourselves, living under the constant fear of the human condition and contracting a sickness that may wipe out our entire family financially, blighting the opportunity for any other family member to ever achieve that sense of freedom, the sense of freedom it takes to pursue one's dreams. Freedom is having your needs met. Freedom is having a place to sleep, the right to live a healthy life, and the right to educate ourselves. And then once those needs are met, then deciding how we want to spend the rest of our time here on this earth. Our materialistic culture has fooled us into replacing the idea of the freedom to move about as we please with the freedom to buy whatever we want. But even if that was true, most Americans don't even have that freedom. Most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and before the corona crisis, half of American families couldn't even afford a $400 emergency. I can only imagine how those numbers have changed now. True freedom is not being forced to work a job so that we may live. True freedom is waking up every day and deciding for ourselves how we want to spend our precious time on this earth. But in our society, we've been taught to shame idle time as laziness, as a drain on our society. We must teach each other to fear freedom so we never reach for it ourselves. But the truth is, in our society, the truly privileged, the richest among us, spend almost no time working, spend almost all their time enjoying the freedoms that come with ownership of their days. If working these jobs was truly the most noble way to spend our time, then CEOs would be the hardest workers among us, but they're not, which is the entire con. Capitalism has taught us to be in competition with each other, and the idle rich feel that they must hold the rest of us down to maintain their freedoms. But they aren't free either, as they are chained by their own fears and their fealty to the system. We need to never forget that true freedom is not how we spend our money, it is how we spend our time. And we need to never stop fighting for a world where Americans have their basic needs of housing, education, and healthcare met so they can be truly free to spend their lives however they want. You're still muted. You're still muted.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's called wage slavery, because when we don't have our basic needs met, then we're being forced to do something in order to survive. And that's the opposite of freedom. And it's just frustrating because we see there's this line of thought that if people have their needs met, then they won't work. But this is what's done in every other remotely wealthy country. The basic needs are met: shelter, food, medical care, and then those societies are perfectly productive and happy. So it's
the gaslighting and the like. We minimize Americans. We tell them, listen, if you weren't wage slaves, all you lazy idle losers would just be sitting on your couch doing nothing. You don't have any dreams. You got to be, it's like, and then we manipulate and gaslight the American people into not believing in ourselves, so that we're like, yeah, no, I mean, like, the whole idea of like following your dreams is a risk, you know, like why should it be a risk? And how we connect success, like just any kind of success, to being paid to do whatever it is that you love. You know, it's like you're not a good actor unless you can pay all your bills acting. It's like, what if we lived in a world where you could act and it didn't matter if you got paid to act or not, because your basic needs were met? So no matter what, you can actually do your dreams. You know, what if, you know, your dream was to open a business, but like so many people are scared to open businesses because they put all their money into it, and then if it doesn't get successful, then they can never do that again. What if no matter what, you started a business, but whether or not that business succeeded, you still had a house to live in, you still had food to eat, you still could go to the doctor when you got sick, you know? Like they would no longer, the capitalists at the top of our system would no longer have control over us. So when they're not passing things like Medicare for all, when they're not passing things like a federal jobs guarantee, it's not because we can't, it's not because it wouldn't make our lives better. It would mean that the capitalist class has less power over us.
Yeah, and the other line of thought seems to be, you know, that the goal is to work all of your life to reach that point where you don't have to work all the time, where you can
Right.
enjoy leisure time. And so that implies that leisure time is a really important part of life, that you should try to get to that.
Mm-hmm.
But why should that be some end of life goal only for people who are, you know, the very top most successful, instead of something that we allow for everybody in our society?
Mm-hmm.
And then I forgot the other thing I was going to say in response to what you were just saying, but yeah, if people had the ability to pursue their passions, you know, we would have even more creativity and even more artistic outputs that we all value so much.
Yeah, yeah, like when they're
Oh,
like,
sorry, I did remember what I was going to
oh yeah,
say. Like, so, and then that goal itself is even getting harder and harder to achieve because of how wages are just staying completely stagnant as productivity increases. So, like, we're still telling people that's the goal while making it less and less possible to achieve.
right, and making it more and more unattainable, and therefore having to make us feel worse and worse about ourselves to believe that it is our fault for this, that it's not their fault, it's our fault. We're the lazy ones, we're not working hard enough, we're not smart enough, we're not unique, we're not special enough to have whatever that special thing is that allows you to break out of, you know, whatever class you are and ascend the ladder. You know, like it's all a lie. And when we keep on bailing out these same companies who are so inept that every 10 years they go completely bankrupt, if it was real capitalism, then it would be like, if you go bankrupt, you fucked up, bye. And it leaves the market open for new businesses to flourish in their space that are going to hopefully be better and newer and like more ready to weather the storms of now. But when we keep bailing out the same things, it's like they're not doing it for the betterment of our economy, to stimulate our economy. They're trying to keep everything the same. They don't want us to grow and get better and come up with new companies, better companies. They want to just keep things the way they are because the people in power right now want to keep it that way. And it's like every time, like the only constant in life is change. And the moment that you try to create a system where no change happens, it's gonna implode, because change must happen. You know, you can't stand in front of time and go stop, no matter how many billions you have.
Yeah, and with bailing out corporations like that, what they're doing, in my view, is trying to reduce the risk of investments, saying like, no matter what happens, if you invested in something, we're going to make sure you don't lose too much. But there's nothing like that in place for people who instead of investing are working every day for money. Then if something happens to them where they lose their income, there isn't that same protection. So it's just, to be frank, like it feels like the investor class is just valued more as people than the working class, and the working class are
Because
being used as tools to provide leisure time for, you know, what they see as like the only real members of our society.
well
It's
the
honestly all horrific.
yeah, the investor class is is, you know, uplifted because they're the ones with the most capital, and capital is what we care about. It's like the moment that we start to think that any of this is personal, like one person has more value than the other, is because if an investor is attached to access with a lot of capital. If that person didn't have access to a lot of capital, they'd be in the bottom 99% with the rest of us getting the absolute crumbs. You know, like again, we give trillions and trillions of dollars in the span of a week to the stock market and banks, and then we throw $1,200 literal crumbs to Americans, and then we squabble amongst each other like, stay inside, how dare you, you know, whatever. And like, we're fighting with each other, meanwhile they're all still at the top laughing at the rest of us.
Well, back to your main point, I think all of this is helping more people have this conversation. I didn't see this conversation happening quite as much now that the underlying system is being revealed by the coronavirus pandemic. So
Right.
hopefully we can get back to work on addressing these things, but with a larger coalition of people who are starting to see it this way.